Facebook land. This is Reverend Harriet Bradley. We are going to be blessed today by Minister Evangelist Carol Berg. She has a powerful message for us this morning. And those of you that when it comes time for the offering, there is a link on my on my timeline. There's a PayPal app, so you're going to be able to give digitally when it comes time for that. We welcome everybody all over in Facebook land. And so we're going to pray right now, and we're going to pray for Minister Carol. We're going to pray for you. Father, in the name of Jesus, I thank you and I praise you, Lord, for Minister Carol Berg. We thank you, Father, for the word that you have given her. We thank you, Father, that it brings life and light to us. We come against any distractions. We thank you, Father, that we're able to hear and to receive what you're about to say and do. In Jesus' name, amen and amen. Here is Minister Evangelist Carol Berg.
Thank you. Thank you, Harriet. Well, hello, everybody. Today I'm going to be speaking about addiction. Now, as you all know, there is a lot of addiction in our world right now. We have alcoholics. We have the people that are affected by them. We have drug addiction. We have people using heroin to unprecedented degrees. So it is something. And there's other things that are easily addictive. Activities, sexual behavior, and being busy, that can be an addiction. So it just about hits everybody, the addiction. We are going into what is commonly known as the 12-step program. Now this program was originally, it was started by an alcoholic who wanted to recover, and he got together with another guy, and they came up with 12 steps that would work, and they did work. As long as they were spreading the message to other people, people were recovering from the disease of alcoholism that they never were able to conquer. So this was a program that they went into the Bible, and they got all these scriptures, and they were trying to attract people to it. But they didn't get many takers because it was all scriptural, and people weren't saved. They weren't born again, so they couldn't make it very palatable for people. And so they changed the wording around a little bit. But what you're going to get today is the original 12 steps. And I've handed out a sheet that has the 12 steps on it, and it has the scripture references to each one of the steps. So if we could all read the 12 steps, and we start with number 1, and it says, "We admitted we were powerless over our dependencies, that our life had become unmanageable." Just join in. "We came to believe that a power greater than ourselves could restore us to sanity." 3, we made a decision to turn our will and our life over to the care of God as we understood Him. 4, we made a searching and fearless moral inventory of ourselves. 5, we admitted to God, to ourselves, and to another human being the exact nature of our wrongs. We were entirely ready to have God remove all these defects of character. 7, we humbly asked Him to remove our shortcomings. 8, we made a list of all persons we had harmed and became willing to make amends to them all. 9, we made direct amends to such people wherever possible, except when to do so would injure them or others. 10, we continue to take personal inventory, and when we were wrong, promptly admitted it. 11, we sought through prayer and meditation to improve our conscious contact with God as we understood him, praying only for knowledge of his will for us and the power to carry it out. 12. Having had a spiritual awakening as a result of these steps, we try to carry this message to others and to practice these principles in all our affairs. So, the Bible that I'm going to be using today, it's the Life Recovery Bible. And it is the regular Bible, but it has different things in it that refer to the steps and different portions of prayers and slogans that are used in treating addiction. So, get this right. Oops. I'm just going to read this foreword that they have in the Bible because I thought it was really, really good. And it says, this is the preface of this Bible. It says, the Bible is the greatest book on recovery ever written. In its pages, we watch as God sets out a plan for the recovery of his broken people and creation. We meet numerous individuals whose hurting lives are mended through the wisdom and power of God. We meet the God who is waiting with arms outstretched for all of us to turn back to him, seek after his ways, and recover the wonderful plan he has for us. Many of us are just waking up to the fact that recovery is an essential part of life for everyone. It is the simple but challenging process of daily seeking God's will for our life instead of demanding to go on our own way. It is allowing God to do for us what we cannot do for ourselves, while also taking the steps necessary to draw closer to our Creator and Redeemer. It is a process of allowing God to heal our wounded soul so we can help others in the process of healing. All of us need to take part in this process. It is an inherent part of being human. And when you come to church, I have seen this. I have seen this happen. I've seen alcoholics that have been alcoholics for many, many years come to the altar and give their lives to the Lord Jesus Christ, and they are immediately delivered from their alcoholism. In other words, they lose the desire to use and abuse. So we're so thankful that that can happen, but also there's this process that goes on, and that is the 12-step process. And sometimes God takes us through a process, and sometimes he delivers right off the bat. So we're so happy about that. Did you get this to someone that just got in here? Okay. The first step, we're going to say it again. So if you'll just grab your thing here. It is number 1. We admitted that we were powerless over our dependencies, that our life had become unmanageable. Now the scripture reference, and if you want to just circle it, or it's on your sheet there that I've provided for you. But we're going to go to 2 Kings. It's called the humble beginning. 2 Kings 5 verses 1 through 15. And this is about Naaman. And he's being healed from leprosy. And so I'm just going to read this, and those of you that have a Bible can follow along. The king of Syria had a high admiration for Naaman, the commander-in-chief of his army, for he had led his troops to many glorious victories. So he was a great hero, but he was a leper. Bands of Syrians had invaded the land of Israel, and among the captives was a little girl who had been given to Naaman's wife as a maid. One day the little girl said to her mistress, "I wish my master would go and see the prophet in Samaria. He would heal him of his leprosy." Naaman told the king what the little girl had said. "Go and visit the prophet." The king told him, "I will send a letter of introduction for you to carry to the king of Israel." So Naaman started out, taking gifts of $20,000 in silver, 60,000 in gold, and 10 suits of clothing. The letter to the king of Israel said, "This man bringing this letter is my servant Naaman. I want you to heal him of his leprosy." When the king of Israel read it, he tore his clothes and said, "This man sends me a leper to heal? Am I God that I can kill and give life?" He is only trying to get an excuse to invade us again. But when Elisha the prophet heard about the kings of Israel's plight, he sent this message to him: "Why are you so upset? Send Naaman to me, and he will learn that there is a true prophet of God here in Israel." So Naaman arrived with his horses and chariots and stood at the door of Elisha's home. Elisha sent a messenger out to tell him to go and wash in the Jordan River 7 times, and he would be healed of every trace of his leprosy. But Naaman was angry and stalked away. He didn't want to hear what that he said. "Look," he said, "I thought at least he would come out and talk to me. I expected him to wave his hand over the leprosy and call upon the name of the Lord his God and heal me. Aren't the Abana River and the Pharpar River of Damascus better than all the rivers of Israel put together? If it's rivers I need, I'll wash at home and get rid of my leprosy." So he went off in a rage. But his officers tried to reason with him and said, "If the prophet had told you to do some great thing, wouldn't you have done it? So you should certainly obey him when he says simply, 'Go and wash and be cured.'" So Naaman went down to the Jordan River, dipped himself 7 times as the prophet told him to do, and his flesh became as healthy as a little child, and he was healed. So in looking at this, the way that we can relate it to most everybody is that people who are hurting badly enough will try almost anything to find relief. Now, for Naaman to go to a prophet was a desperate long shot. Naaman risked his prestige and wealth to find healing. Didn't do him any good because he didn't want that. The prophet didn't want that. In the end, Naaman was healed of his leprosy, but not because he offered him that reward of all that money. The real issue was not how much it cost, how much that healing cost. It was more important that he went to the one and only one that was able to help him, the one true God. That's the scripture reading from the Old Testament. And now we're going to switch into the New Testament. Mark 10, verses 13 through 16. And this is where where the little children are being blessed. Once, when some mothers were bringing their children to Jesus to bless them, the disciples shooed them away, telling them not to bother him. But when Jesus saw what was happening, he was very much displeased with his disciples and said to them, "Let the children come to me, for such is the kingdom of God belongs to such as they. Don't send them away. I tell you, as seriously as I know how, that anyone who refuses to come to God as a little child will never be allowed unto his kingdom." Then he took the children into his arms and placed his hands on their heads, and he blessed them. For some of us, the memories of childhood are memories associated with the terror of being powerless. If we were raised in families that were out of control, where we were neglected, abused, or exposed to domestic violence and family dysfunction, even the thought of being powerless might be very frightening. Jesus tells us that in order to enter the kingdom, we must become like a little child, and this involves being powerless. Like children, with no inherent power for self-protection, safety, comfort, or fulfillment, little children are reliant on the love, care, nurturing of others for their most basic needs. So like a child, we must cry out, even if we don't know exactly what we need. This admission is the first step if we are to become healthy and functional. That was the New Testament reading. Now we're going to go to step 2. So if we all can read step 2. 2. We came to believe that a power greater than ourselves could restore us to sanity. Okay, the first one that I'm going to pick from there to read is Grandiose Thinking. And this is in the Old Testament, Daniel 4, verses 19 through 33. And this one is David talking to Belteshazzar, and he had a dream, and he wanted the interpretation of this dream. So Daniel had the interpretation, but he was really, it just stunned him. So this is that. Then Daniel sat there, stunned and silent for an hour, aghast at the meaning of the dream. Finally, the king said to him, Belshazzar, don't be afraid to tell me what it means. Daniel replied, oh, that the events foreshadowed in this dream would happen to your enemies, my lord, and not to you. For the tree you saw growing so tall, reaching high into the heavens for all the world to see, with its fresh green leaves loaded with fruit for all to eat, the wild animals living in its shade, with branches full of birds, that tree, your majesty, is you. For you have grown strong and great. Your greatness reaches up to the heaven, and your rule to the ends of the earth. Then you saw God's angel coming down from heaven and saying, "Cut down that tree and destroy it, but leave the stump and the roots in the earth, surrounded by the tender grass, banded with a chain of iron and brass." He went with him. Let him be wet with the dew of heaven for 7 years. Let him eat grass with the animals of the field. So can you imagine getting that word from a, from a dream that you had? He was really in despair about that. Your Majesty, the Most High God has decreed, and it will surely happen, that your people will chase you from your palace, and you will live in the fields like an animal, eating grass like a cow, your back wet with dew from the heaven. For 7 years this will be your life, until you learn that the Most High God dominates the kingdoms of men and gives power to anyone he chooses. But the stump and the roots were left in the ground. This means that you will get your kingdom back again when you have learned that heaven rules. O King Nebuchadnezzar, listen to me. Stop sinning. Do what you know is right. Be merciful to the poor. Perhaps even yet God will spare you. But all these things happened to Nebuchadnezzar. 12 months after this dream, he was strolling on the roof of the royal palace in Babylon and saying, "I, by my own mighty power, have built this beautiful city as my royal residence and as the capital of my empire." While he was still speaking these words, a voice called down from heaven, "O King Nebuchadnezzar, this message is for you. You are no longer ruler of this kingdom. You will be forced out of the palace to live with the animals in the fields and to eat grass like the cows for 7 years, until you finally realize that God parcels out the kingdoms of men and gives them to anyone he chooses." So that same hour, that prophecy was fulfilled. So what can we learn from this example about addiction? And what we can learn about is that when you're trapped in addiction, like the king was trapped in his own grandiose notions that he had done all this work. But when you're trapped by addiction, one will often deny the truth with grandiose thinking. And like Nebuchadnezzar, above it all, a God unto ourselves, accountable to no one. Nebuchadnezzar lived like an animal. And to go to Daniel 4:24, this will be your life until you learn that the Most High God dominates the kingdoms of men and gives the power to anyone he chooses. When sanity returned, it came with praise and honor. When Nebuchadnezzar's mind returned, so did increased honor, increased glory, and increased his kingdom. God can remedy our season of insanity if we trust him. And, you know, this might seem far-fetched to think about somebody eating grass. I have seen it. I have actually seen somebody in the throes of alcoholism, laying out on the road or by a curbside, eating grass. So this is a modern day thing that happens to some people. I worked in mental health facilities where young people have taken drugs, and they too, if they have to be watched when you go out take them outside. They will fall down on the ground and eat grass. So it's you don't want to end up eating grass. Just follow the law. Now our next reading is in the New Testament, and it is Hebrews 11, 1 through 10. And this one is called Hope in Faith. What is faith? It is a confident assurance of something we want is going to happen. It is the certainty that what we hope for is waiting for us, even though we cannot see it up ahead. Men of faith in days of old were famous for their faith. By faith, believing God, we know that the world and the stars, in fact, all the things were made at God's command, and that they were all made from things that can't be seen. It was by faith that Abel obeyed God and brought an offering that pleased God more than Cain's offering did. God accepted Abel and proved it by accepting his gift. And though Abel is long dead, we can still learn lessons from him about trusting God. Enoch trusted God too, and that is why God took him away to heaven without dying. Suddenly he was gone because God took him. Before this happened, God had said how pleased he was with Enoch. You can never please God without faith, without depending on him. Anyone who wants to come to God must believe that there is a God and that he rewards those who sincerely look for him. Noah was another who trusted God. When he heard God's warning about the future, God believed him even though there was then no sign of a flood. And wasting no time, he built the ark and saved his family. Noah's belief in God was in direct contrast to their sin and disbelief of the rest of the world, which refused to obey, and because of his faith, he became one of those whom God has accepted. Abraham trusted God, and when God told him to leave home and go far away to another land that he promised to give him, Abraham obeyed. Away he went, not even knowing where he was going. And even when he reached God's promised land, he lived in tents like a mere visitor, as did Isaac and Jacob, to whom God gave the same promise. Abraham did this because he was confidently waiting for God to bring him into that strong heavenly city whose designer and builder is God. And there's this whole chapter, it's called the chapter of faith, and it is about all the different people and how God rewarded them for their faith. And the comment about this is that anyone who wants to come to God must first believe that there is a God and that he rewards those who sincerely look for him. If we see God as one who is waiting to reward us, we will become more eager to look for him. Are you not ready? You can ask for help, or you can say, I have faith. Help me to have more. Ask God to give you more faith. Then we can ask him for the courage to hope for a better future. Some of us may have given up on living, throwing themselves into self-destructive behavior with reckless abandon. This is the addict. Others may have given up, distancing from others as though we were already dead. Choose life. Choose God. Okay, we're going to go next to step 3. Let's read it all again, everybody. 3. We made a decision to turn our will and our life over to the care of God as we understood Him. Okay, our Old Testament reading from is Redeeming the Past. And this is from Isaiah chapter 54, verses 4 through 8. Fear not, you will no longer live in shame. The shame of your youth and the sorrows of widowhood will be remembered no more. For your Creator will be your husband. The Lord Almighty is His name. He is your Redeemer, the Holy One of Israel, the God of all the earth. For He has called you back from your grief, a young wife abandoned by her husband. For a brief moment I abandoned you, but with great compassion I will take you back. In a moment of anger I turn my face a little while, but with everlasting love I will have pity on you, says the Lord, your Redeemer. So, what we can say about this is, when you turn your life over to God, you give Him your secrets, your sin, and your shame. And it's called the Great Exchange. When you give Him your junk, He gives you back joy and peace and fulfillment. Mm-hmm. So we also give Him every moment that we had any disgrace, every tear, every word we wish we could take back, broken promises, loneliness, all the dreams that died, dashed hopes, broken relationships, our successes and failures, as well as all of our yesterdays and the scars that were left by yesteryear. God is our restorer of our losses. When we give God our past, He can make up for all that we have lost. He can rid us of shame. He can fill the empty places in our heart with joy, peace, and satisfaction. Going on to the New Testament, Matthew 11, verses 27 through 30. And this one is called Submission and Rest. Everything that has been entrusted to me by my Father, only the Father knows the Son, and the Father is known only by the Son, and by those whom the Son reveals Him. Come to me, and I will give you rest. All of you who work so hard beneath a heavy yoke, wear my yoke. for it fits perfectly. And let me teach you, for I am gentle and humble, and you will find rest for your souls, for I give you only light burdens. When burdens become so heavy, we find our way of life is leading towards destruction and death. We may finally let God into the driver's seat. Taking on a yoke implies being united with one another in order to work together. When yoked, you and God must go in the same direction. The work is then made considerably easier and manageable. God can turn us around and get us on the road to life. He knows the way and He has the strength, just like if we were hooked and yoked to someone very strong and powerful. We wouldn't have to, our burdens would be very light and easy. And other translations of the Bible that I've heard, His yoke is delightful. Mm-hmm. So if you've got something that's just such a burden, it's not yours to carry.
That's right.
That's
Amen.
too much.
That's right.
Too much.
That's right. Praise God.
That is too
Amen
much.
on that.
So that was step 3. That was the New Testament reading for step 3. Now, of course, you, in going over these steps, you don't just do them like that. Some people I know have to reach a certain point. In the 12-step programs, that first step that we went over, you can't make somebody do it. It has to come out of their own heart. They have to reach a bottom, what they call a bottom, where they realize, hey, my life is unmanageable. I'm really out there. I'm not happy with this. So when we come to step 4, we probably have, you would have done step 1, step 2, step 3, and then you're coming into step 4. So let's read that all together. Step 4. We made a searching and fearless moral inventory of ourselves. So you have to have all those steps completed before you step into doing step 4. By then you have some sanity. You're looking towards God for what He wants to do in your life. You're believing that God is able and wants to help you. You've come to that decision. So on step 4, the Old Testament reading is from Nehemiah. And it's chapter 9, and verses 1 through 3. Okay, this has a special significance for the Jewish people. And if you know, many of you know what October 10th is about. Do you have any idea? October 10th? What it, do you know? It's what?
What is it? Is that the harvest?
Say it again.
Is that the harvest holiday?
I'm not sure. Did you know, Annette?
No.
October 10th. Well, anyway, maybe when you look it up, it might mean more. I didn't have time to look it up. But it starts off on October 10th. The people returned for an observance. This time they fasted and they clothed themselves with sackcloth and sprinkled dirt in their hair. What is it?
That's Yom Kippur.
Yom Kippur. Okay. And Yom Kippur is the Day of Atonement, correct?
Yes.
Okay, so the Day of Atonement, this is what they did. They were sorrowful. They were sorrowful. And Israel submitted themselves, separated themselves from all foreigners. The laws of God were read aloud to them for 2 or 3 hours. And for several more hours they took turns confessing their own sins and those of their ancestors. And everyone worshipped the Lord their God. Some of the Levites were on the platform praising the Lord with songs of joy. So this, the Day of Atonement, was a time for confession and sorrow and remorse. Now, confess means to bemoan something by the wringing of hands and also to throw away. So sins means offenses against God, others, and self. It can also refer to habitual sinfulness and the consequences of such behavior. In their confession, the Israelites owned, bemoaned, and then discarded their sin. Afterwards, they were able to make a new start. So, another way to say this is that we own our own garbage, our sins, by taking personal responsibility for our choices and actions. Bemoan is to allow ourselves to grieve. So there was a lot of crying going on. And discard is by leaving it behind and turning towards the future. Annette, could you get this to the fellow that just came in? Hi, Sean. I'm just going to get you up to speed a little bit, Sean. Sean is a minister, and very happy to have you here today. We are doing, I'm doing a reading about addiction, how to get away from addiction. And as you know, many people are addicted. We either love somebody who's addicted, or we might be addicted ourselves. And there's many, many ways to be addicted, as you well know. Probably the most long time one was sex and alcohol. And then, of course, we've gotten all these fancy designer drugs now, so that addict you right off the bat. But this is a program, it's called a 12-step program. And these steps were originated by an alcoholic and a friend of, 2 alcoholics actually. And they got together and started talking about things, and they came up with the biblical 12 steps. And when they practiced those steps, they didn't crave alcohol. They didn't, that desire went away. But they followed the 12 steps, but it was too hard for people to follow it because it had all these biblical references that you see on that sheet that I put up. And so the 12 steps were adapted a more palatable use that was not, it was scripture based, and as we know, we can follow the principles of the Bible and have success. But people that have come into the church oftentimes will get in a recovery program that is biblically based. So this is the biblical base of these. We've covered step 1, and just to go over this a little bit longer, let's just read the 12 steps again. Okay, if everybody will join me. 1, we admitted that we were powerless over our dependencies, that our life had become unmanageable. 2, we came to believe that a power greater than ourselves could restore us to sanity. 3, we made a decision to turn our will and our life over to the care of God as we understood Him. 4, we made a searching and fearless moral inventory of ourselves. 5, we admitted to God, to ourselves, and to another human being the exact nature of our wrongs. 6, we were entirely ready to have God remove all these defects of character. 7, we humbly asked Him to remove our shortcomings. 8, we made a list of all persons we had harmed and became willing to make amends to them all. 9, we made direct amends to such people whenever possible, except when to do so would injure them or others. 10, we continued to take personal inventory, and when we were wrong, promptly admitted it. 11, we sought through prayer and meditation to improve our conscious contact with God as we understood Him, praying only for knowledge of His will for us and the power to carry it out. Having had a spiritual awakening as a result of these steps, we tried to carry this message to others and to practice these principles in all our affairs. So right now we're on 12. We're on the I'm on step 4, and so step 4 again is we made a searching and fearless moral inventory of ourselves. We've had an Old Testament reading at Nehemiah 9 verses 1 through 3. Now we're going to be doing a New Testament reading, and that's in Matthew 7 verses 1 through 5. This one, the name of this one is finger pointing. This is in chapter 7, starting at the very first verse, and this is Lord's teaching about criticizing. Don't criticize, and then you won't be criticized. For others will treat you as you treat them. And why worry about a speck in the eye of a brother when you have a board in your own? Should you say, friend, let me help you get that speck out of your eye, when you can't even see because of the board in your own? Hypocrite, first get rid of the board, then you can see to help your brother.
Amen.
Amen. Now there's probably been times when we avoided our own wrongs and problems by pointing the finger at someone else. We may be out of touch with our internal affairs because we are still blaming others for our moral choices. And people will avoid self-examination by making moral inventories or judging and criticizing other people around us, evaluating, criticizing. There will be time in the future for helping others after we have taken responsibility for our own life. And as you know, if you were around somebody that criticized you every time you were around them, you wouldn't want to be around them.
Mm-mm.
Now, if they're humble and they know that they've got problems and they're not just right about everything, that person you might enjoy being around. So, that's as far as we're getting today. I'll probably have to do a follow-up with the other steps. If you enjoyed this teaching, I certainly would like to continue it. So, at this time, we're going to take up the offering, and Minnie,